Hi friends, welcome to the Plane Fun RC channel. I'm your host, Saul, and here we are starting another build of the Kyosho Phantom biplane. Let me show you what I've got going on so far. So we just finished putting on these little itty bitty speed winglets, if you will, on both ends of the wings. As you can see over there, there's our other one on the other end right over there as well. So we've got that done. We're gonna go ahead now and get our CA hinges glued in place. And then after that, we'll work on getting our wing halves together and getting our servos installed as well. All right, friends, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here, we're getting ready to do the bottom center section and put those halves together. Let's talk about that for a moment. So you got a couple pieces here to do the process. First is this aluminum piece here. Now you're going to notice it's clearly not level. So the bend, as you can see there, that is slanted forward. That's why we have it so it says front. So do keep that in mind when you're putting that on there. And before you do that, you do have to sandwich these plywood pieces onto the actual dihedral brace as well. So make sure you go ahead and use some epoxy for that and sandwich those on first. But make sure your edges are nice and clean all the way around. Don't let glue seep out. If it does, you got to wipe it away. Very, very important. All right, let's go ahead. Let's get these, get this sandwich. Let's get these halves together. Let me show you where we are, by the way, on the instructions. I always like to share that along the way in case you have the plane but don't have a copy of the instructions. All right, friends, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update, you can see we've got our center section glued and it's drying. We're looking at the top portion here because the bottom wing has an anhedral as opposed to a dihedral. Let's talk about what we're working on here. These are the spars for the outer wing panel, and you'll notice how we have two pieces. They have to be sandwiched together. Notice how this piece there is thin, and then this piece right here is a little thicker. So the thick goes in the front, the thinner piece goes in the rear. And let me show you what I'm referring to as we look at the instructions here. You can see here how we have the thicker piece up front and the thinner piece in the rear. And you have to also keep in mind that there is a long side and a short side. And the short side goes in the center wing section, whereas the long side goes in the outer wing panel. Now, not only do we have to focus on the spars, but we've also got to focus on the landing gear. It gets glued into the center section, so that's very important to do that before joining the outer wing panels. All right, let's sandwich some spars here, get that taken care of, and then afterwards we'll get our landing gear glued in place. More to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here, you can see we have our landing gear glued in place, and we have our spar for our center wing section on both sides glued in place. Let me talk to you about the spars, if I may, for a moment. It's because they are angled, it is absolutely imperative that when you insert them up until the bend. Remember, they are curved, as you can see here on the instructions. You can see how they're curved right there. So you want to go right. You want to insert them just until the middle section where they curve up going this way. The reason for that is because if you don't, the outer wing panels will not sit evenly on the sides. I did that through a dry fit. I checked it. I checked the fit of the outer panels with a dry fit to see exactly how they would fit, and I found that when the spar was not perfectly centered, the wing was either sitting too high this way or too low. It was not sitting evenly on both sides. So just a friendly tip. All right, we're gonna let that dry, and then we'll go ahead and do our glue on our outer wing panels. More to come. All right, friends, you can see we've got both wing halves in place, and now we're gonna go ahead and focus on getting our servos installed. Let's talk a little bit about that. What's interesting about it is that the hatch for the servo is actually on the top of the wing, but the opening is on the bottom. That's because it's a very thin wing. But what's really neat about it is, look at this. When I flip this over, it's laser cut, meaning it's showing you the exact position where you need to actually position the servo itself. So it's very helpful here. Glad they included that little diagram. So when we look at the instructions here, for those that are interested, there's some important things to keep in mind. We want 16 millimeters between the center hole and the outer hole. For the actual servo arm itself, we of course only want one arm on there. And then you can see the configuration here. This is the, once again, we're looking at the door here. and you can see it in relation to the actual crosshairs that are on the door. You can see the diagram there, and then of course our crosshairs that are on the actual bottom portion of the door itself. All right, let's go ahead and get our servos installed for ailerons, and more to come. All right, friends, as we continue the installation of the aileron servos, let's talk a little bit about it just for a brief second. So you can see we've got our aileron servo set up just right. Notice how the center line here is in the center line of the arm, and then the line right here, you can see lines up with this portion of the servo here, if you look carefully. Now, important thing are the blocks. Notice how we've got one block going lengthwise and one block lays height-wise. That's important. That way it will fit properly back into the wing. I just wanted to point that out to you real quick. All right, let's get this bolted in place. More to come. All right, friends, we have our servos installed, and we have gone ahead and programmed our AS3X, because that's what we're going to use on this plane, and they work great. No problems whatsoever. Not a lot of arms sticking out. I have a suspicion I may need to make the arms longer, but I did follow the instructions. So we'll see what happens. All right, let's go ahead, get our horns on, aileron horns, and more to come. All right, friends, as you can see, our push rods are attached, and everything's working really well. Looks great, working without any problems. The only thing I ran into is, I'd make a recommendation to you, go ahead and put a longer servo arm on there. I know that the instruction said 16 millimeters from the center, but it definitely needs to be just a little bit longer. I will tell you though, if you do put it on, if you do keep the recommended length of the servo arm, you're going to have to open up the hole a little bit, where the arm comes out, and you can see it right there, because the push rod, as you can see, kind of goes right inside the wing. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so they're both working really well. We're going to go ahead. The next step is we're going to put on our wheel pants, because they get glued onto the actual wing itself, and then finally our belly pan. More to come. All right, friends, we've got our wheels in place. Now we're going to put our wheel pants on, and let me explain why it's important. I'm going to look at the instructions for 1 second. So notice here that we're looking at the left wheel pant. There's a notch here. And let me show you what I'm talking about. If you look on the inside of the wheel pant, look where my thumb is located. You can see there's a little bit of a notch. That's how we know which one is left and which one is right. And if you hold it up to the diagram, just like you see here, you can see that the notch is right near my thumb, and when we look at the diagram here, we can see that the notch is right here as well. So that's very important. So this is the left wheel pant. You want to mark them off accordingly, and then of course the right wheel pant has the notch in the opposite place. So we need to go ahead, put our wheel pants on. We got to trim away a little bit of the covering. We're not taking off all the covering. We just need enough for the width here, and that's probably about 1/8 of an inch. Going all the way around. So we'll go ahead and we'll cut off some covering. All right, let's get that glued in place, and more to come. All right, friends, we've got our wheel pants in place. The only bit of information I can pass along to you is make sure that when you remove the covering, that it follows the contour of the wheel pant, and remove about 1/8 of an inch width of the covering from the outside, and then of course from the inside, and that'll match the surface area that's in direct contact with the wing. And the only other thing to keep in mind is once the wheel pant's dry, you may have to go through, cut a little notch out right there so the push rod will clear. Moving over to our instructions, let me show you where we are. We just finished up the step right here, which is attaching the wheel pants, as you can see. And then we're going to go ahead, we're going to move on to this step right here, where we're going to put on the little plates where the screws are going to go in place that are going to hold the wing. And once we're done with that, then we're going to go ahead and mount the wing and put our belly pan in place. All right, more to come. All right, friends, we've got our wing in place on the plane, you can see, and really looks great. Before we put our belly pan in place, I want to go over a couple things with you. First and foremost, the holes that are drilled in the fuselage up in the former in here, they are too small. They will not allow the wing to sit properly in the saddle, so I recommend opening them up to 3/8 of an inch using a drill. You may need to go just a touch wider. Now, with the holes back here where the bolts go into, this one was fine, this one was off. So the hole that was drilled into the wood here was 3 millimeters. You have to make it 4 in order for the screw to go ahead and fit in properly into the blind nut that's in the fuselage. Outside of that, it's in. So now we're going to go ahead and take our belly pan, which is right here, and we're going to drop that in place. and get that glued in. All right, friends, more to come. All right, friends, one quick tip before you glue on your belly pan, you're going to need to clear a little bit of the fiberglass away where the hardwood blocks sit, the blocks that were mounted to the bottom of the wing, because it just was not sitting flush or sitting properly. And what you're looking for is when you have the proper mount cleared away, you'll notice how the belly pan will sit nice and flush, just like that. All right, let's get her glued in place. More to come. All right, friends, as you can see, our belly pan is glued in place. It's drying right now, but it went on perfectly. Really good. One thing you want to keep in mind, too, give yourself a gap up front here, because what happens when you go to take the wing off, remember, you've got to be able to tilt the wing forward, you know, lift up the rear to slide it out that way. So give yourself some space up front, just a thing to keep in mind. All right, the wing is done. So now we're going to go ahead and start focusing on the parts of the fuselage. So part 2 will be coming up in a little bit. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and part 2 is around the corner. More to come.